Hi everyone, this is Group 4. We would like to present about syntactical changes. Our group consists of first, Ramadhani Sri, second, Lukluk Trisnawati, and last but not least, Zenni Syarifa. To open the presentation of this chapter, let's look at the following situation. There is a child who tells his mother by saying me and Charlie went to the movies. Then her mother immediately corrects her son's words because it is wrong. According to prescriptive standard grammar, it is syntactically incorrect to use the form me for the subject of the sentence, even if it's conjoined with another subject, Charlie in this case. The correct form is I. At the same time, it is not considered polite to talk about yourself first, and for this, purely stylistic. Thus, the mother would correct his son by responding with something like, "Don't say me and Charlie, say Charlie and I." It is just like at the second example. Meanwhile, there is confusion between syntax and style combined with an insufficient understanding of syntax. Let us begin with data. Like many other English nouns in A, this is an original neuter plural of Greek and or Latin origin. Specifically, data is the plural of Latin datum, which means something given that can be used as the basis for discussion. Even Shakespeare confessed to knowing only a little Latin and less Greek. And since Shakespeare's time, the study of Latin has become even more limited. It is therefore not surprising that the average English speaker would not know without being expressly told that data is a plural form in Latin. Moreover, data normally come collectively as a set. The need to talk about an individual datum arises rarely, indeed. Speakers may therefore be forgiven if they reanalyze data as a singular mass noun and consequently use it as a singular verb, as in the data presented here shows that Professor Bundogle's analysis is wrong. Not with the plural verb in the data presented here show that Professor Bundogle's analysis is wrong. Critics commonly refer to structure like A as syntactically incorrect, but that assessment is highly questionable. The syntax of A is impeccable once data is reinterpreted as a singular mass noun. If there is a mistake, it does not lie in the syntax, but in the morphological analysis of data. Moreover, it is a mistake only in comparison with the traditional analysis of data as plural. Historical linguists who are naturally open-minded about linguistic change may personally prefer to treat data as plural. In the meantime, the critics are directing their attention to new A plurals that are undergoing a similar reanalysis, such as media, which originally plural of medium as an information medium, and criteria, which originally plural of criterion. The case of hopefully looks more promising as a genuine case of syntactic change, at least at first sight. This is because those who decry the use of hopefully in structures such as "hopefully it will rain tomorrow" resort to the following syntactic argument. The word hopefully behaves syntactically similar to words like fortunately, unfortunately, regrettably, and likely, like fortunately it will rain tomorrow, and like those Words expresses a speaker's attitude to what is being reported in the rest of the sentence. These correct or traditionally established attitudinal adverbs all correspond to structures of the type like it is fortunate that it will rain tomorrow, which contain the corresponding adjective. For hopefully, however, parallel structures like it is hopeful that it will rain tomorrow are unacceptable. This syntactic argument against hopefully quickly evaporates. First, underlying the argument is the hidden assumption that the example in letter B are more basic and that the example in letter A can be justified only if they can be derived from the example in letter B. But this assumption is arbitrary. It would easy to choose the structure in letter C as the basis for derivation. And as the example show, such a derivation would permit the example in letter A in hopefully it will rain tomorrow. Secondly, at least one attitudinal adverb established in traditional English usage, happily. Happily cannot be explained by derivation from B version, from the example in B version, but only from C version. Like, we are happy that it will rain tomorrow, not it is happy that it will rain tomorrow. This might suggest that syntactically there is nothing wrong with happily it will rain tomorrow or the formation of the example in letter A. In these additional examples, here one or the other or both of the putative base structure is either strange, indicated by a question mark, or unacceptable, characterized by an asterisk. Still, the adverbs are well established in traditional usage. Presumably, even among the critics who inveigh against hopefully. For the example in presumably case, it is possible to come up with another alternative base structure, as in it can be presumed that it will rain tomorrow, which works, but is quite different from it is presumable that it will rain tomorrow and we are presumable that it will rain tomorrow. For the example of the case of actually, yet a different base structure could be postulated. Like in the example in letter D, it is an actual fact that it will rain tomorrow. But the need for such ever new, ever different base structures casts serious doubt on the whole syntactic approach. This anomalous situation from this example can thus be explained as the result of rather ordinary type of linguistic change.
Syntactic change is highly systematic, affecting whole classes of words and their syntactic behavior. Some development of sound change may spread rapidly, others very slowly depending on their social value. The issue of social evaluation once again raises the prescriptive grammarians who in the 17th and 18th centuries tried to establish the ground rules for a standard variety of English. Through the time of Shakespeare, English had been relatively free of prescriptive regulation. One reason for the new prescriptivism must have been the increasing emphasis of the Renaissance on using and cultivating the vernaculars instead of Latin, and the feeling that for the vernaculars to compete with Latin, they had to be provided with a prescriptive grammar that could rival that of Latin. Another factor is that French had been giving way to English as the language of parliament, the king's court, and the courts of justice. But English was not ideally suited to this new task, since it exhibited high variability both geographically and socially, which made communication between different groups difficult. The grammarians, who busied themselves with laying down rules for a standard English language, were faced with the near total absence of an English grammatical tradition and an overwhelming presence of a Latin grammatical tradition. As a consequence, they tended to formulate rules that were better founded in Latin grammar than in the realities of English usage. For instance, in the area of morphology, they set up English nominal paradigm with 6 cases for no other reason that Latin distinguished 6 cases. But while in Latin, the case forms were distinguished by different endings. English had just 2 overly distinguished case forms, boy and boys. The rest of the paradigm had to be eked out by combination of preposition plus noun. But note that English has many other such combinations, for example, with the boy, which were not incorporated into the paradigm because they lacked Latin counterparts. The effect of Latin grammar was not limited to the teaching of morphology, but the syntax was also affected. Latin had a rule according to which double negative particles within the same sentence cancel each other out, and in fact may create a strong positive, as in nullus non venit, which means no one not came. From the Old English period, English had inherited a very different rule, namely the double negatives reinforce each other, as in I cannot go no further. Influenced by the Latin model, the grammarians of the New English Standard inveighed against the traditional use of double negation and promoted the Latin rule that double negatives cancel each other out. In this particular case, the grammarians slowly won out. Structures like I cannot go no further are ungrammatical in modern standard English in the meaning intended by Shakespeare, even though they appear quite often in non-standard varieties. In modern standard, I cannot go no further is possible only in the meaning I can certainly go further. The success of the grammarians may have been aided by 2 factors. One was an appeal to logic. If negation is equated with negative x and a positive statement with positive x, then simple mathematics will tell you that double negative of x is equal with positive x. Secondly, and perhaps even more significant, adopting the Latin rule of double negation provided an easy and very effective way of distinguishing standard from vernacular and of linguistically marginalizing speaker of the vernacular.
Now we come to the word order in English and related language. The syntactic change differs markedly from most forms of sound change and analogical or morphological change. This development from the syntactic change also affected the use of nominative or the sentence containing subject and object pronouns. And in here, the complex syntactic shift in English created a sequence of changes which is significant altered the major word order from early Germanic to the modern English that we use now. And now we are going to talk about the examples from utterance in the modern English and also Old English. On the left side, in the modern English, we have a basic sentence or the unmarked order where the order is formally used the subject, verb, and then followed by object. For example, the chicken crossed the road and it is acceptable by all the people that use English. And then the B, the road the chicken crossed, it is a marked order where it has a deviation from the accepted ones and mostly accepted ones in modern English. And here the road is in relief, like it is more focused on the road itself, but usually it is using another terms like is the road that the chicken crossed or the road was crossed by the chicken, not in order of the road the chicken crossed. Meanwhile, the example from C until F is not acceptable because
Usually in modern English, we use the order of subject and then followed by verb. Meanwhile, these C until F sentences are not following this order. Now let's take a look on the example in Old English. It is taken from the famous epic Beowulf, and in here there are 6 sentences, and these all are acceptable and also marked, in which it can be used by anyone. Like, there are no violations on how it is syntactically ordered, whether the subject is on the front or in the middle or the opposite from the position of the verb and also object. Like, it doesn't change the meaning of in here hand overrode right. Like, it is still meant as the chicken crossed the road. However, in Old English, it is the basic one that we usually use, or the formal order is the subject followed by object, and then the verb is on the last one. The C point in which marked as the basic. And in Old English is also have the same order as the Sanskrit and also Latin. They have the same order, like whether the order is interchange each other, but they still have the same meaning. As I already talked about the difference between the modern and also the old English, and here we can see that there is a cycle here, and the blue arrows, the subject object verb, it can change into subject verb object and also verb subject object and return again, or the word order in the old language or old English, or we can say early Indo-European language, it is not really doubted or debated and the use of the order of the word itself. But in here we are also notice about the use of topics that the people we use in the sentence. Meanwhile, the topic here in English language, it is usually stated in the first line, and it is stated the most or the focus things that we would like to talk about. Thus, it is placed in the first line, and the rest of the sentence is depend on the topic itself. So it can vary whether the object or subject or the verb is subject or object can be put in the front. And here we can see the basic structure of modern English is subject verb object, and then early Indo-European is subject object and then verb. We got to the point, did English change from the early basic SOV to its modern SVO? And English sentences usually have complex verbs that contain the tenses or else. For example, the use of auxiliary and main verb, and like the use of past perfect, like past perfect have, had, crossed, or the auxiliary plus main verb. And here we have an example that the similar parallelism between the Beowulf of Old English and Sanskrit or Latin. And here we can usually find the structure with main verb followed by auxiliary at the end of the clause. This is what happened in the past, but then Beowulf tends to prefer a different order, but like in the example here, thus the auxiliary is placed in the second position, but the main verb stranded at the end of the clause, and it doesn't change, move or to the front. It's still placed on the back or the end of the clause. Now, this placement of auxiliary in second position is like the innovation that motivated the fact that early Germanic auxiliaries had properties characteristic of clitics. And here the clitic is like a word of or part of word that is structurally dependent on a neighboring word, or we can say the topic itself. Thus, the auxiliary is dependent to the topic itself. Thus, it placed on the front of or in the second position in the front. You can see the figure 2 where the topic and then the position of auxiliary, which is influenced by the clitic, is moved to the front, right behind the topic. The topic, it can consist whether the subject or the object. We can choose whether else. Thus, and then there will be a letter change or further development in Old English period. It is come to the figure 3, and where in which the topic here will be followed by the auxiliary that is moved from the figure 2, the topic auxiliary, and here there are some understanding or an argument where the stranded main verb that is left behind on the back or the end of the sentence, as we can see on the example of sentence B, hen have the offer gangen rather, then it is moved. The main verb is moved following the auxiliary to the front of the sentence right behind the topic. So the pattern will be the topic and then followed by the auxiliary and then main verb. It is because auxiliary and main verb functionally belong together as component parts of morphological complex, but functionally a simple verb. Thus, it will result to the structure with is similar with the modern English, as we already know the chicken had crossed the road, subject and then followed by auxiliary and then verb. We usually see to the function or the detail of what we are going to use in a sentence. Thus, it reached the further development and turned into the modern English as we all know right now.
And that's bring us to the end. If you have any questions, please let us know by raising your questions in the discussion sessions. Thank you so much and have a great day.